You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. I have Mark Russell, founder of a company called Rockin. The website's pretty simple. It's rockinbed.com. So, Mark, thanks for coming. How you doing today?
Doing awesome, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
So, Rocking Bed is not a bed with speakers in it that blasts rock music, is it?
No speakers, no blasting.
What is it then? What's the premise?
So it will gently rock you to sleep. Our tagline is "Sleep like a baby again" for adults.
That's cool. So how did you get this idea? Did you watch old people in rocking chairs and the idea came to you, or how did it come about?
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, we would go on trips, and I remember trying to sleep in the back seat, sitting up, stuffed in the station wagon, and trying to sleep sitting up was very uncomfortable. And at times I would get the whole back seat to myself, but the seat belts would be digging in on my side. And I remember one time maybe setting up I don't even remember whether it was a mattress in the back or whatever, but later on, I just never really got that. I knew, I don't know if you've ever have you ever felt kind of that when you're going to sleep in a vehicle and you kind of get that daisy in and out feeling, when you're kind of
I get that on airplanes, and I hate it. It's like a torturous half sleep. But then again, I don't sleep well in vehicles and on planes.
I don't sleep super awesome sitting up, but there's studies that show that movement helps you go to sleep. That actually just came out, a new study. But getting back to the study, or back to the story, is my wife and I in 2004 went on a cruise, and it was the very first time that I was in a bed, this is what you're supposed to do. You're laying down, you're flat, you're not in a car, and the boat was moving very, very gently. And I just had an epiphany. I was like, oh, this is what I was trying to feel when I was a little kid in the back of that station wagon. This gentle rocking like a hammock, but I'm not curled up like a taco in a hammock. And it just felt so awesome. And I got awesome sleep. And a lot of people who contact us have been on cruises. And they're like, I slept better than I've ever slept on a cruise. And so anyway, that was in 2004. And I got off the cruise and it's like, I am going to find a unit, some sort of machine out there that will do for me what this bed, that I can have that same experience. And I looked all around and it wasn't out. I'm an entrepreneur with software development. I'm a certified arborist. I've been a stockbroker and insurance agent. I'm also a insurance public adjuster. And, in 2014, after sitting on that idea for 10 years, Lori and I, my wife, were like, you know what? If we're going to start another business, because we're always starting something, if this one fails, cool. at least we get the prototype.
Right, exactly. That's cool. Very cool. So what kind of reactions have you gotten from people? Do they, just honestly, do some people poke fun at it, or do they think it's really cool, or do they feel sheepish because, they don't want to feel like a baby, or they're embarrassed? What's the thoughts around it?
It's people who get it. People who don't like it, absolutely don't like it. We're not selling peanut butter cookies to people with peanut allergies. In other words, if you get motion sickness, if you're someone who has vertigo, absolutely you're not in the market. But if you're the type of person who really digs that sleep you get on a cruise or loves hammocks, people are just in love with it. They're like, that's what I want. That was me, and that's why we did it.
Right.
You know, we've been out to a few shows. We were at CES 2 years, and people kind of stop and they look and they just kind of get a weird look on their face because they're kind of not used to seeing that. And that's been kind of a challenge, I guess.
So what are some parameters of the rocking? Like, if it goes too fast or it's too strong, I'm sure it would make someone not feel good. And I bet you there's like some kind of ideal cadence, and I don't know what you call it, but how far it moves in one direction or another, that's important, and how fast it changes direction. I would guess all that has to be tuned in.
So a lot of that tuning just came from an issue of the mechanical cost effectiveness of trying to dial in. The word you're looking for is speed ramping, how you ramp your speed in and out. And the way that we ended up doing it, our mechanism is really simple. It's a crank arm. If you picture like a locomotive, the old steam engines, how they had that piston going in and out that rotates the wheel. So ours is just a rotating crank arm that transfers that energy into a linear motion back forth. And the ramping works. We tried doing, on one of our first versions, we tried doing like a customizable linear actuator with customizable ramping. And it was just so cost prohibitive to build all that technology that it was shutting down the system. But to speak on a little bit about like what you mentioned, the ideal, there was a company I think called Sonomat or something out of Europe. And they had something a few years back on that idea of what's good, up and down, side to side, head to toe, and they didn't actually they did studies on movement, but not on one movement versus another. So I don't think there've been any like definite decisions made on whether it's better to go up and down. I can tell you personally from experience, this is going to sound a little weird, but once you close your eyes, it's very, very difficult to determine. If it's too smooth, you can't even determine whether you're going left or right. Like people will open their eyes. That's one thing we've seen at shows. The second people close their eyes, they open them back up because they feel like they're not moving. It's very, very subtle feeling. They expect, when they see it, they expect, oh my gosh, I'm going to hate that and I'm going to feel it. And people lay down and they instantly open their eyes within like half a second because they thought it stopped right when they closed their eyes.
Well, how far does it move back and forth? Like, what's the timing of the back and forth rocking motion?
So the maximum that we have is 15 revolutions. The offset is about 2 inches. So it's a total of a 4-inch stroke. So left to right is 4 inches, or off center is 2 to the left, back to center, 2 to the right, back to center. The max amount of times that you can go left, back to center, right, back to center is 15 times in one single minute, which I think they call that like 15 hertz. But it can go slower. I don't think you'd want to go slower though. If it goes any slower, like if you went to half speed, you'd almost not feel it, I think.
Well, have you done any like experimentation on like the optimal speed of the thing, the optimal number of hertz? Or are there studies out there that show different speeds affect people differently?
It's funny that you say that. This new study, and you might have found us because of that new study that I think it came out January 23rd or something, and it was from the same people. And there's a couple of professors at a university in Switzerland who actually they did that. The Sonomat thing was, I think, tied to them, but they did one on naps in 2011 that showed good or benefits of getting to sleep faster for naps. And then they just came out with one for 8 hours of sleep that showed the benefits. And I think their study was at 15 hertz. I think I remember seeing it. And the funny thing is I've been at this for 5 years and I haven't taken time to read through their report, which I maybe should have done. So,
maybe reading through it puts you to sleep, just
that's right. It probably would.
Well, because when I think about this, I think that I bet you the speed would affect how people would sleep. And then also during stages of sleep, I mean, it's getting like, maybe too granular, but I wonder if during REM sleep, during deep sleep, if it moves differently, if that would affect you. And, what if it shakes you instead? Like it shakes you back and forth instead of rocking you. what would that do to you? So just those thoughts come to mind, things to explore maybe later on.
I haven't done any studies personally, except for just, I can offer this up to you. A couple things, because you can't talk to many people who slept on rocking beds. There's just not many people out there who have. One thing that I found really surprising is that when you fall asleep on a rocking bed, if you start to wake up, it's kind of the same thing as, when you go to sleep on a plane and you're kind of in that little weird phase. I have woken up many, many, many times, so much so that it's predictable now. It doesn't surprise me anymore. You absolutely cannot feel yourself rocking when you start waking up. It's the weirdest thing. I literally have to open my eyes and look at the clock beside my bed to see if it stopped or not. Somehow your body just gets used to that movement, or maybe you're kind of dozy and in sleep state, but you can't feel it. That was surprising.
So what's been the feedback? I mean, hopefully rocking bed is, like I said, it's a great thing, and a lot of people are going to be using it, but what's the feedback from you? Like, what's your experience with it, and what's the experience of other customers?
So we have only shipped out maybe about 10 units, and they arrived like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. People like one of them that hit Illinois, their son, just this morning, I talked to him. Their son is autistic, and we shipped it out a while ago, but they didn't set it up. I guess with autism, there's a little bit of a process to have that new thing introduced into at least that child's life. And so finally they got that happening, and they were thrilled. A lot of special needs kids that we've heard have a hard time going to sleep, and a lot of them actually need to be rocked. We've gotten like comments from our queries from parents who are just exhausted because that's a requirement. And he wrote me, and he was just like, or he talked to me this morning. He was like, Mark, I want to give you a review. We're super happy. But I haven't heard from a lot of other people. I know that I love mine, but I actually have not heard back because it's been a very short turnaround since we shipped them out.
Well, you just said the most exciting starting phase. That's okay. I mean, there'll be a lot more, and hopefully this podcast will, give you some calls and stuff. But so what's been your experience with it? We'll start with that, yourself and your wife, and what does it feel like before and now? You described some of it, but what's your sleep like?
The funny thing is, when I use the bed, I don't have a super hard time going to sleep at nighttime anyway. But when I have a really hard time going to sleep is when I'm kind of tired on the weekends. And as an entrepreneur, my brain is just going constantly. And so, sometimes I'm tired and I want to take a nap on the weekends, and I just can't get to sleep. And that's when, I just absolutely love it. Because I'll put my head on the pillow and just imagine myself back on that ship. And you can kind of hear the mechanical sound of the motor underneath. We bought a really nice motor, but there's still obviously any sort of movement's going to create friction. And so I'll just kind of imagine that that's the steam engine down there. And I love it. My wife actually said, she was like, the first time we set it up, because, I'm kind of dragging her into it. But once she tried it, she's like, Mark, if I, who thought I wouldn't like it, feel this way, people are really going to like this. So she really likes it. But once again, there are other people, there's some, it's like, once again, there are some couples where one has insomnia, or vertigo rather, and the other really wants it, but it's not happening because the one partner is not going to.
Interesting. So what's your, you've got it working, you shipped a few. I guess now you're going to be getting some good feedback from people. Anything that is going to be in the next iteration of it, or is it good for now, and that's what it's going to be for the foreseeable future? Or are there things that you want to change about it? Yeah,
so it's funny because this has been, Rich, a good learning experience as far as, I don't know if you've ever done any hardware development. I've done a lot of software. I program a lot of software, and at least with software, all you're in it for is the labor for features, where hardware, you're in it for tooling. And so on every feature that we added, we started with a metal frame, and then I basically got to the time after we did all the designs that they're like, okay, you ready to do a run? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay, let's do a 500 piece run. And we're unfunded. Like, we don't have funding. We're bootstrapping.
Yeah.
And it's like $250,000 for the tooling plus and like, as a tree guy, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have $250,000 when this idea is so nascent. It's so like not on the minds of people. And this, remember, we've been at this for 5 years. So that's like way before. It was neat to get on the Live with Kelly and Ryan show. That got us some publicity. But, you know, like it came into the focus of people's minds after this new study came out. And I'm hoping that'll catch some traction. But like, that's a lot of money to invest in inventory, which we didn't do. And so we changed over to a wood design, and that's what we shipped out. We got effectively the function in a different form. I mean, the form is kind of the same. It's your box springs effectively, but you know, underneath the like material cover, it's wood rather than metal. And we got that, but at the end of it, there are some things like this is just from a business standpoint where some of those features I think are less needed if it gets in the way of production. So like the moving headboard we're nixing. That's not going to be in there.
Right.
In fact, it's not on the site anymore. It was on the 15 that we shipped. And yeah, it's kind of a pain in the butt sometimes if you're a tall guy, if your pillow rubs on the wall. But it's also really hard to manufacture a big, heavy moving headboard. So there's some little tweaks like that. Bent corners, for example. There's nothing that says there needs to be a 3-inch radius on the corners of the bed. So we're nixing that just for the tooling reasons. Right. Because we want to get it out there at an affordable price. Like we're aiming, I don't know if we can ever do this, but we're aiming for sub 2,000. Right now it's 2,450, but it was at 3,450.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know that there's the whole lean startup minimum viable product theory out there, which makes a lot of sense. But, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, your heart is in something and you want to have it have all these features and make it really great. And it's hard to say, all right, what's the minimum viable product and do that, because you kind of don't like that, or at least that's been my experience. I don't want minimum viable. I want something that's really great.
Is that from your experience on interviewing, or have you personally experienced that in businesses of your own?
Oh, I personally experienced that feeling. I want to put this and that and this and that in it, and you're like, all right, fine, here's the minimum viable thing, but I hate it.
It's hard. It's hard to rip them out. That's exactly right. And like, literally, like,
that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So like going back 5 years, with the MVP, because I've read Eric Ries's book, and it's funny because it's the same thing with software. I've got another piece of an app that we're building right now with another little project that I'm running, which is an MVP. But like going back to this idea of the linear ramping motion, that feature of the ramp, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you could design your own little ramp up, ramp down and have a shareable app and everybody can share it? You know, oh, we like this program or that. And then it almost killed the project 5 years ago. And that's when I transitioned to a crank arm. Because a crank arm is so much more simple and it doesn't require all this coding. It doesn't require all these other things. And so I've done that again with the little stuff like the 90-degree corner, you know? And so, so anyway, it's been like it almost got killed again off of this. And like literally Lori and I are about to buy some, like as a tree guy, like I weld, I'm a very hands-on guy. So we're going to be building these things custom for each person who orders one right in my garage. And we'll do MVP and we'll make it happen. And if people like it and love it and share it, we'll get them awesome beds and see if it grows.
Yeah, well, I do know one thing that offsets the dislike of MVP is, you know, asking a lot of questions in the market and tweaking stuff and making it better and better. And that, at least for me, that seems to offset the hatred of the MVP, because then I feel like I am giving the person a better product and I'm tuning it in and I'm hearing what they have to say, and that satisfies that desire of mine. So.
Yeah, like on some of the units, I had a few people like, well, Mark, I already have a headboard. I'm like, well, you've never had your pillow scraping on the wall. But it's loud too, by the way. Put your ear, whoever does that, you put your ear on a pillow and go rub it on a wall. It is really surprisingly loud. But my personal unit, I don't have a moving headboard. because we learned about it after. And so what do? I adjust. I scoot my feet off the end of the bed a little bit when it's running.
Okay. Well, very cool. So what's the best way for people to find out more about it? It's new. They're starting the ship. People may have a lot of questions. I don't know. They can go to rockingbed.com, but any other interaction that you'd like? Any other way for them to find it?
I mean, they're always welcome to email any questions that they have to support@rockingbed.com. They can sign up for our newsletter on the site. And, our next, we're taking pre-orders. They're, it's, the pre-orders are 10% down, fully refundable. So if someone wants to put $245 down and then they change their mind or whatever, it's not a big deal. It's through Tricelery, if you've ever heard of that, pre-order system. But yeah, they can sign up for the newsletter, email us at support@rockingbed.com. But yeah, that's it.
I think you should get the band Kiss to sponsor it, so they could be the rocking bed, and you could have pictures of them like standing on the bed with guitars, for a double entendre.
They need to come over. Yeah, they need to do that.
Yeah.
You get Metallica. So yeah, I was just gonna say the depending on when the show airs, our goal is for the next set to start shipping latest July. Like on my plate this week as I'm looking through all these little pieces to like kind of put together this next prototype and verify and do the testing. I'm gonna have tons of them. But this week we should be within a week and a half. I should have my version of the metal unit built and verified, and then we're going to start buying equipment and starting to put these things together. So
that's great. Well, Mark, I hope it's a big success, and keep it going. And I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Awesome, Rich. Thanks again for having us. We appreciate it.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.